Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. This is a duly posted and called meeting of the Goals and Priorities Committee of the Board of Trustees of the Alamo Heights ISD.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to go through next Thursday night's agenda, if you will. We have some fun recognitions. We do have a spotlight on excellence for Jennifer De Leon, who is an interventionist at Cambridge. We have a video powering the profile that aligns the work of one of our teachers with the profile of a learner, and that's Erin Heinze, who teaches kindergarten. And then we have our exciting live stream announcement of the Alamo Heights Teacher of the Year, but first we'll recognize every campus Teacher of the Year. So their names are there: Bruce Howard, Alejandra, Allie Martinez at Cambridge, Kathy Caudell at Woodridge, Carla Stanford at the Junior School, and Bella Martinez at the high school. Just great talent, and it's always fun to be able to have other families to the crowd show up, and we do a big deal.
How does the work get fit?
That's a great question, Carrie. So we have a committee that Abby chairs that has representation from every one of the committees. And they read the application that the teacher here submits, and it's the Texas Teacher of the Year application. And it's from here. This will go on to Trinity, and then it also goes on from there if they're selected as the Trinity. So everybody, and they've done that last week, so they've kept it confidential as to who the winner is. Just so you know, we do call everyone ahead of time so that it's not sad if they don't get it. They're kind of prepared. Yes, I don't want people to be. And so we let them know if they're not the winner, and we let the winner already know ahead of time too. So.
Yeah, we're spoiling the moment for us.
It's fine for everybody else, but they're prepared. I just feel like that's sometimes hard to do in front of everybody. So.
But in the age of reality TV,
Yeah,
It's 100% staged.
it is staged,
It
but
is.
don't say that. Okay, presentations for possible action. We moved this report from our last regular board meeting with a compliance report that we're required to present to you all about our bilingual program, and so Jimmy and Medina will go through that with you. I have shared with you that from my first year as superintendent, we've implemented a campus checkup beginning, middle, and end of year accountability piece on our campuses, where our central office team goes and hears from each one of the administrative team, the deans, the instructional coach, about the progress, academic progress throughout the year. They set goals, and they also tell us what they need support from us at those meetings. But last year, when I was visiting with you about it, we had some conversation that it would be great for you all to see kind of where we are middle of the year to you. And so we'll have a pretty thorough presentation from each of the campuses to let you know where they are.
So I have a quick question on that. So these are this is gonna be more of like a campus update, not like history of their time in the, okay, that's what we're doing.
So they selected a key question that aligns with academic achievement with our community-based accountability. And so they're going to share with you their key question, the data that they use to measure that, where they were at the beginning of the year, and where they are right now in the middle of the year. Okay. And then annually we present an overview of counseling services, and it's always eye-opening to see kind of the number of students that are utilizing our counselors. You all know that we partnered with different outside organizations this year, Jewish Family Services and the telehealth, UT telehealth. So it'll be good for us to pulse check and see how our students and families are using those resources as well. Okay. So looking at the consent agenda, I was going to pull the naming rights out and have that part of our building committee. So let's just see how we do time-wise. If we're ahead of time, Frank, I'm going to have you do that as part of this agenda. We will put before you, I'm not sure that this came in the draft board book that was submitted to you this past week, but it's the resolution to pay our employees for increment. It was in there already. Okay, so it's a resolution that we've used in the past to pay both hourly, and teachers are on a 187-day contract. And so when you don't have a work day for them, either you have to make it up or you have to approve paying them when they're not here. So we have that for you to review. We'll have board member committee reports.
A quick question, when we have days off like that, since we do our calendar based on the number of minutes we have to do we have enough room, like flexibility in our schedule to absorb a couple of days like that, or do we have to somehow add a little instruction here and there?
Frank is our minute counter, and as of right now, with the 3 days that we were out, we're good, we don't have to add any more time. You'll remember about 3 years ago, we had to add like 5 minutes per day to Howard, so we extended their day by 5 minutes just there. They didn't have as many minutes as, our secondary campuses have a bunch of minutes.
That was because we weren't, it wasn't because we missed any days, it was because we were just short, we didn't realize we were short.
No, this is a different time, this is when it was, well,
I
I
thought
mean,
it was way better.
Howard was permanently changed because of the minutes with the
Oh, that's the
legislature,
original.
but that's what you're telling me, Sarah.
Yeah, I was thinking that's what
But
we had
this
to
is
do.
an actual.
Yeah, because it has said that actually on each of the blasts that have gone out to the community that we won't have to make up these minutes, so I know it's been like, when we get to the third one, we're like, yeah, we still need to make this up, everybody's a little bit like, we got that much time.
Yeah,
This
I
guy-
had that
so
question too.
that's-
We have one more day
Don't,
left.
I don't wanna say,
It's, I feel like it's certain campuses for
Yeah.
one more day, but
we're getting tight.
Lisa, you're correct. I mean, what you're saying is back in the day, we dismissed Howard at 2:30. And then there was legislative change that said, you know, we had to extend that, to I don't know what it was at the time, so we went to the 3 o'clock, 3:15. But then we had to go the other way, we had to extend it in the middle, in the
Okay.
springtime.
So it's
to
like
extend
six.
by extra minutes, yeah. Good question. All right, Mike, well, let's, I mean, everybody has the committee meetings on their calendar. David will do foundation on February 16th. Here's TDSC meetings, okay, so you'll report what the January, meeting was about. And, Brian, you were at the district design team, so you'll give a report there as well. Okay, Mike, business recommendations, consideration of approval, appointment, election officials.
It's just, we always, approve the county as our election officials and judges. It's just required that the board approves.
Are we having an election?
We are having one, so we have one candidate pre-file, in place two.
And what does that cost the district? What do we pay, Mike?
This is an even year, so we'll pay more, we'll pay less on an odd year than an even year. And it'll probably be around between 40 and 50,000.
Is that cost the same if place 1 and place 2 are contested?
Yes, it costs the same. It's based on how many precincts you have. And how many entities are having an election. Some people don't have an election, so then it's a bigger piece of the pie we have to take.
Yeah.
So, Frank, for sake of time, if you come on up and kind of talk us through the naming rights. I didn't know we could just sail through that. So,
These are the ones we talked about in that meeting with Heather, or did
yes,
Okay.
well, they're part of the endowment.
Yes.
Did you print out that chart for our board members? Should we pull that up?
I did not print out this.
But I will present it though,
Oh, okay.
but so you're right, it is in your book. And, just a quick review of why maybe we're doing this. When the trustees created the policy about naming rights, one of the things that they and you, I forget who was on the board at the time, built in was that, the superintendent creates, the minimum gift amounts, comma, in consultation with the trustees. And so this is the consultation. And so you guys all saw it in the board book. And so the process you might be familiar with, foundation worked heavily on it. I still put the notes in, I kept the notes in there about the Highland Park comps. That kind of just gives you and I'll make this a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But, the point of this is not necessarily to review each one, although we can talk about particular ones. The point is just to say, this is kind of our working draft. Now, the color-coded things are, things that we felt like we needed to, either are gonna be changed at some point, so you don't wanna put those on the table, or were recently changed. I've got
Or
one.
will be changed. In other words,
Yeah.
we're definitely, you know, we have plans to demo different wings of the high school. We're gonna wait to name anything in there until after new construction, so.
They don't get a discount?
They don't do
Two months.
You get to name it.
It's prorated.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so Heather, again, did a lot of research just across the state, kind of coming up with some comps to provide to us. From there, I had David, who's the foundation representative, kind of review it and kind of see if there are any red flags. So he spent some time talking to folks about this as well. And so we're at the place now where, again, as per policy, I present this to y'all just to get feedback, if there's anything that you kind of see that you'd like us to dig a little deeper in.
And then there's an actual, consideration and vote.
So there's not for this, when,
I know this is
Like,
kind of what
you
you were
get the
thinking,
name.
but
yeah, so right now, we have someone interested in moving forward with naming at this point. When that comes forward, I will bring that to you to vote to approve.
oh, okay.
So every individual
Has to go.
naming right will be,
Yeah.
and so currently there's just one interest?
Yes.
Is that- okay.
Yes, but again,
I haven't been presented to people.
as part of the endowment efforts, that will be something that's,
Mhm.
they're just starting to talk about that right now, so.
I found it interesting that there's so many things to name. Is it overkill? I mean, I don't mean to be, I don't,
Yeah,
you
no,
know me,
get
I
where
love to
you're
raise
going.
money,
Mhm.
but at first I was like, well, wow, this is a lot to,
And that, I don't see that all those things will get named, I just
Yeah,
think that it leaves it open for, if someone is very passionate about fine arts classroom at Woodridge, because
Right.
they love that teacher,
yeah,
they have that opportunity, whether every single classroom ends up getting named is a different
yeah,
thing, but people have different things that
loves,
they're.
yeah.
kid
No, I
love.
know, I
It's
know,
really
I
about
know.
what their kid loves,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I think the point also on the front end was that, you have to kind of do a blanket review first, because you can't, otherwise you're doing, trying to value add stuff later. Oh, let's not compare that one because somebody wants to name that.
Mhm.
And so if you do a blanket kind of baseline, then you kind of have it, everything's kind of on scale.
And I mean, have we thought about signage, like the Woodridge track, how are you gonna, or do you not have signage for the name? How does that work? Cause where do you put a sign for the
So
Woodridge
it-
track?
That's probably
Yeah,
Heather's.
The
Don't
policy,
sign it.
yeah, so the policy says that the superintendent or designee works out what the specific signage is. and where it
Okay,
goes.
where does, okay.
But
Where does the money go?
To the
Yeah.
Foundation,
Foundation.
endowment,
The school, Alamo High School Foundation.
endowment, the new.
Is Highland
Good
Park
question.
comparable from a number of campuses standpoint, meaning 2 elementaries, 1 junior, 1 high school?
I don't know the answer to that question. Are they?
I think
A little bit.
They have more elementaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are two junior highs.
They have to be up.
And 2 junior highs? I'm just wondering if that fact impacts their values versus ours.
And what are the holds for? Why are there holds?
Cause like for the visitor locker room,
Yeah.
that's, possibly gonna be
Until we
outdated down the
redo
road,
it.
until we redo it, and put it back on there.
I don't have anything to say on these specifics, and I defer to Heather, and then I know she's working with you, Dana, so.
That's great.
And so this technically is a regulation. Any other questions?
No, looks good.
Yeah.
Great consultation.
Then we'll be moving forward. Morning, Coach Redmond.
Good morning.
Ask you to come up and be in the hot seat here.
Perfect timing.
Hey, you
It's not a hot seat.
Go.
Slipped in just in time.
It's a cold seat.
Yeah.
It's a spotlight.
Yeah, my watch says 7:60.
Perfect, get out.
All right, we're gonna move on to the building committee meeting. You ready
So
for
you
it?
come on up,
Good, right.
Ron, right here, yeah.
Coach Ritterman?
Mike, would you come up as well, because I'm gonna have you give just a little bit before Ron starts. I'll put you on the spot here, just to give a little historic perspective of when we had the facility open in the past, and what that looked like, and how, patrons could purchase, their spike or how you had it set up.
Well, both at the junior school and the high school. The junior school, tennis courts, they could buy passes. All the passes were $25 for a year. At the high school, they could get on the track and walk the track. At that time, the track was fairly open all the time, so people could walk during school hours there. At the junior school, so when we put up the gates, then that sort of stopped everybody from using the tennis courts. And that went on for several years, and we've had issues with people turnstile, we gave them, like a badge that would unlock the turnstile to get in. But they found ways to keep it sort of open so people could get in along with it. Then there was some vandalism, associated with the track on the weekends especially.
So let's sit in the security issue first. Y'all know that when we did our community forums and we went out and we talked, you as trustees kind of led those conversations at Woodridge, my first year as superintendent. We heard very clearly from the community the need to secure the perimeter, on each one of our campuses. And so access to campus by our community, at that time, we decided we would not have any kind of access from outside during the school day so that we could have the fences all around. And so that's one issue. And then, at that time, our athletic director before Ron was really concerned about the vandalism, situation. And so we did, prior to construction, we ended up just kind of shutting that down and just said we would reconsider it once we had new facilities, once we could kind of put some boundaries and some restrictions around it. And at that point, we had the conversation that we wouldn't be just open without someone there working and kind of monitoring the situation, because there was damage to equipment on the field, there was damage to track itself, there was misuse of restrooms over there. I mean, it was pretty egregious. And
At
so,
the high school?
At the high school.
It's hard.
At that point, was it open through the night, or was it just
They
specified
were open,
hours?
yeah, 24 hours basically, anybody could get into it.
So, I mean, was a lot of that vandalism late at night? Do you remember?
I don't remember specifically. I think it was on weekends, and,
It-
when no one was
Usually on
around there.
weekends, that type of thing.
We may
And it
not
was
know, I
just
guess,
for
what
the
time.
track, they were not supposed to use the field at all. So at times you'd have to run people off, they would have soccer games or football games, pickup games like that. And you'd have to run them off.
It's just for the track.
It was just for the track.
What about like people running the stadium stairs? Is that allowed?
That was, I don't think we really monitored that as such.
But yes, people did.
Even before that, years before that, the track was always open. And people could walk the track or run the stands or whatever they wanted to do. I forget when we locked it down, decided you had to pay to use it. So we went from, it was open to anybody who wanted to use it anytime to you had to buy a $25 pass to when construction started, we stopped it all again.
Okay, so Ron has some experience with this, from the place that he came from before, and I had charged him with, coming up with a proposal for a way to kind of move, I wanna say kind of a soft opening, to kind of see how we can manage this. But, we've heard, I get emails all the time from community members that would like access to it. I feel that it's important for us, to open our facilities to the community as we're moving forward with new phase of conversations about our facility, and we'll need community support to pass that next bond. And so, again, this is kind of a soft opening because we're gonna have to hire someone to do it. But Ron tried to look at schedules, to determine the times when the track is not used as much. And so I'm gonna turn it to you and kind of talk through your proposal.
All right, so where I come from, we did have it open all the time, and it led to a lot of issues, which y'all both have spoken on already. I would get calls throughout the weekend at night, early morning, hey coach, there's a guy out there hitting the 7-iron off the football field. Just things you wouldn't believe, or a guy on the moped doing laps around the track.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you go, really? But yeah, really, it does happen. So we're not into any of that kind of stuff, but we are into having it open for our community members. And if they'll come and walk the track or run up and down the bleachers, we think that's really cool. So what we've tried to do is pick an evening during the week and then a morning on the weekend for a couple of hours to start with. And again, I don't know if it's 20 people that would do this or if it's 100 people. And obviously the more that come and we charge them for a pass, then we could even maybe pick another night and another morning and start growing it to what it is. But we don't want this, we want this to be cost efficient. So as long as we have people sign up to do it, then we can entertain more days and more times, because then we can hire somebody to be there just to be an observation, to make sure they're not bringing their dogs in there, leaving deposits and things like that. So that was always my job on Monday morning, was to go out on the turf field and pick up anything that was left behind from the weekend. And that was not a good thing, just not, it's not for safety concern. So what we've come up with, and we have a little flyer right now, we've decided that Wednesday nights, after everybody's gone from campus, like 7 to 9, is 2 hours that anybody from the community can come up and walk the track, run bleachers, do whatever. And then Sunday mornings early, 7 to 9 a.m. before they go to church, if they want to do that. So we start with those two as our start times. And again, if it's 10 people that show up, we probably won't expand it any, and if that works. But if 150 people show up and we can pay to have more days and more times, we'll always be open to that. But I think this is a good starting point to get them back on campus.
So, are we gonna have when passes, are we just gonna open up the gate with somebody?
We'll have a pass, they'll buy a pass that they get to come in, and we'll open like the south gate by the parking lot on that end, and just open that gate, and there'll be somebody there from 7 to 9 to let them in and let them go to the stadium and do their thing, and make sure they're not bringing their dogs or motor vehicles or anything else that would damage the facilities.
No 7 hours.
I wish I was making all that up, but I'm not. I mean, it's crazy.
Like even rollerblades, that would ruin our track.
Yeah,
Rollerblades.
rollerblade, you can't have rollerblades on the track.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, what's the standard by which we have to open it? I mean, it's similar to us opening up, say, the auditorium or other facilities for public. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the
We don't
legal
have
standard?
to, but once you do, you have to make it available to everyone.
Okay.
But the impetus, sorry, the impetus for opening it is the public pays for it.
Right.
They've paid for it, so it's their facilities. Our primary concern is the safety of students. That's why I appreciate that we're not gonna open it during any hours that students are using the facilities. But after that,
But I would
I thought
also
there was
say,
a standard. by
I
which
think
it's-
you're confusing the facility rental.
And maybe it's not the same,
Yeah.
but I thought there's a standard also, because you do hear the argument of, my tax dollars paid for it, therefore I should have access 24 hours whenever I want, which I don't believe is the
Right.
correct legal standard, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is so an understanding of, I hear your argument, but that has to be couched or reasonable, or, so, do you understand my point? Like, there's a legal standard that I'd love to just be able to understand by which we have to open up those types of facilities to the public.
So there is no legal standard. I would tell you that we're very unique in the way that we open our playgrounds at our elementary schools, the way that we keep the junior school completely open. Northeast does not do that. There's no access to competitive fields and tracks over there. Again, this is very unique, that we're as open as we are to the community.
and just to make sure our policy is consistent, do we do the same thing with the natatorium? Because I know we allow the public into the natatorium.
They too buy a pass, and there's certain hours that they're able to use it.
And I'm not sure of the hours of it.
When there are no students are there,
Right.
just so that we're consistent.
Right.
Okay.
And do we have security at the natatorium during those hours?
So we just, there's someone.
Because you have
There's an employee that's.
Oh, an employee.
Yeah, there's always somebody there for supervision.
And that's a little different, because you have
Life.
We have to have
Lifeguards.
Right.
So at this point, since we don't know how many people would take advantage of it, I imagine, maybe this is more a question for Mike, but we don't know if there's a financial impact on the district from this yet. I mean, if we had a lot of people do a pass, then it's gonna pay for itself. If we had only 5, then the district might be getting a little bit of money, but we're talking about small amounts here, right?
Well, the thought is if nobody showed up and we paid somebody to be there, well, it probably cost us about $5,000 for the year. But I'm gonna assume that we're gonna have that covered by people that show up.
Right.
Is it an hourly rate, Coach?
Excuse me?
What's the hourly rate?
It'll be an hourly, I think we're gonna go 25, so they come up here for 2 hours on a Sunday morning, open it, make sure it's cleaned up, lock it up, pay $50. And again, and we're thinking about charging, I know Mike said back in the day it was 25, we're thinking about charging 50 for it to get started. And I'd be open to refund them some money at the end of the year if we made way too much money or something. I mean, I don't know if that's. Well, I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen, but I mean, the idea is we don't know, so we put 50 just to make sure.
$50 for
For
the
the-
individual's
for a
pass for a
pass.
year
For a
to
pass.
use it.
Correct.
I'm just curious, what made you choose Sunday over Saturday? Are there,
Because sometimes we'll have soccer games or practices, but we
Okay.
never have
School
anything on Sunday.
Right, well, we can't, right?
So it's
Go out.
completely open in the morning. We did it early, just because there's early morning walkers and.
Sure, yeah, I just was thinking Saturday might be because of church, Saturday.
But there's always usually there's always a conflict because either soccer, football, anything, track, anything going on, there's always a possibility of having Saturday
Something on
morning
Saturday.
practice or
Okay.
games.
I just didn't think we did anything Saturday.
But typically Wednesday evening and Sunday morning, there will be nothing going on campus and we can open it up.
So we are not proposing to do this right now. We're gonna open after spring break. We're gonna start advertising. We'll advertise in school views, we'll advertise in Monday Mail. We'll put, a little notice on the marquee over there for community members, but everyone will get the information in school views into the mailbox, so.
What about insurance? Like, do we have an umbrella that would cover any incidentals that would happen during that time? Yes, we're always covered, okay. But what if something were to happen?
Right.
Just no,
Yeah.
no, even to our facilities, insurance would take care of it.
Is this, sorry, is this past the 50, is that comparable to what the old price was for the old pass? Oh, if you said that, I missed it. Okay, we're doing.
He did.
You did? I know, sorry, okay, so that makes sense, I guess, is we're having to pay somebody now, that's the difference, right? If somebody, I'm just thinking through, we've had some folks come to our meetings and talk about this issue, and I think it's a really valid concern by taxpayers to wanna know. So I'm just thinking through why, the logic of how we got there, but I think that makes sense. And hopefully, Ron, as folks come to you and if they are, if they want different days or longer hours, it sounds like our message is, we're just trying this out for now, we'll see if
We're gonna be
we can
very
expand
flexible.
it, we will, we're not, it's not, no, this is the only answer, but this is how we're gonna start, it makes sense to me. Okay.
So how do the passes work? Is it an electronic deal or someone?
No, it's-
You just got a
It's just a
little card?
pass, I mean, it'll be a pass.
Somebody did.
There'll be a person there at the gate, let them in and just let them do their thing.
Well, and I think part of the communication from us, if we have people come to us, it needs to be just, we had a policy before and it was abused. So now we're trying to offer it again, but we have to, approach it with caution based on the experience that we had. I don't have any problem saying that to people.
And that's exactly where I come from as well.
Yeah.
We tried to be wide open and let them do it and turn it into a negative. And it ended up costing us a lot of money to fix things.
Yeah.
And now it's not even about the taxpayer's money anymore.
And I would remind folks that the junior school track is open all the time.
Yeah.
For them to use in the field, and it is.
It's a
just all
regular
the time.
track
And
now.
you can-
It's a regular shaped track now, right?
No.
No, not yet.
It's
No.
still the goofy?
It's still the good.
That's the next.
Prefer to explain that way.
Well, it is.
Is the kidney bean?
No, it's not even a wonder.
That's only about as wide as this table.
It's a
But that
little
is-
bit wider than.
That's a good track
That's
for me.
about it.
I mean, that is something in the future, next bond, if we do build it in.
That's what it is.
With the track,
It'll be a
that
standard.
may be something we look at changing from taking away from the high school and moving to the junior school. Because it'll be a smaller, it won't be a class complex as a high school is.
Well, and the thing about the junior high is that if you're using something, it's wide open, people can see.
Right.
As opposed to if you're behind the stadium,
Right.
you can be doing a lot of, whatever, mischief, let's call it. And people wouldn't notice, but if you're at the junior high, if people are walking by or driving by, it's very easy to see what's going on over there, so that's a little bit,
For now, till the bond happens, right? In the
No,
beginning
it's
years.
okay.
Is
even with the bond, it'll still be
stadium?
open.
We haven't done a real design yet, but
Yeah.
like the original.
The original, whatever.
Design is pretty open, so. Just,
All right, any other questions for Ron?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it is 7:30. We are moving into assessment and long-range planning committee meeting. And we're gonna start with 2A, a presentation on employee free speech. And this is a largely just in learning piece, instructional. We had this presentation a year ago or 2 years ago.
We did have it about a year ago, prior to the new folks joining the board, and so, in light of conversations and, citizens to be heard at our meetings, that was important for everyone to have the same information.
How's it going?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. To add to that context, Brian, thanks. We had planned to have this in January, bookended with the SB3 update because, that was about my teachers teaching stuff in the classroom, and so we thought it would be wise. We ran out of time, and so we bumped it to this time. The second thing is that, as I'll show in my slides, we haven't gone over this particular content before. We have gone over some content in March, and so that's how I'll start it.
But I think Frank brings up a really good point. It would have been so nice if we were able to have this right after the Senate bill information, because it's a companion piece to that. And so I'd invite you to try to push the cobwebs away, remember kind of how we walked you through.
Yeah, so I'll frame it
Conversations
this
that we
way.
had with our staff.
So
Yeah.
even before SB 3 passed, about all the critical race theory stuff, even before that passed, we still had to deal with issues, right? With issues about what employees could say and couldn't say in the classroom, what was considered political and not political, that kind of thing. And so back in March, we actually did a long-range planning with the board. Oh, I'm presenting it to only myself.
I think that this is a real city. Didn't someone?
JW Moon.
What is it though? Is it
I don't know.
like
It's
Beijing
like
or something? Dubai?
Does not look at this.
So, with the board long-range planning in March, and then again, the same presentation to the trustees in March and August, we discussed these issues in that slide two at that time, which was a review of our teacher professional development, right? We trained teachers on how to talk about controversial topics. I think that was in April maybe. We had 3 modules. Oh, that's very public. Lots of people have asked for it. We've given it. In that same presentation, we did a review of this TASB e-source on employee free speech, which was, I don't know, 14 pages, and TASB just kind of essentially reviewed all the case law on employee free speech. And then we try to have that conversation from a lens of, we're a learning organization, not a bureaucracy. We don't make lots of rules and run around trying to act bureaucratic about things. We try to have conversations with professionals. We try to reach common ground to do understanding. So that's how we framed that conversation last time. And then we also, part of that learning time, you guys remember, was scenarios, where we actually gave you some very real world things that we dealt with, and we turned and talked with your partner, and you talked about, well, what stands out to me about that one, and how would I deal with that, or how do I think the administrator should deal with it, that kind of thing. So to kick this one off, I thought we could start with a few, not as many as last time, but I'm gonna list 3 scenarios that are actual scenarios that we've dealt with. And then I'm gonna ask you to elbow up, or we could do Brian and Dana, Brian and Carrie, and then you guys there, and then Jimmy and Clay. Pick one of the 3 to say, that's interesting. I think this one's the most interesting thing to me, and why, and these are the issues I see in it. So here's the first one. This is a real one. At the beginning of February, Black History Month, at 5th grade hallway, bulletin board had an image of a large fist. It was about 4 feet high, fingers clenched, facing with no words or an explanation. Scenario 2, sponsor of the high school Gay Pride Student Interest Group asked for permission to create the Alamo Heights logo in the color of a Gay Pride flag to sell as a fundraiser for the club. Scenario 3, a counselor posts a Gay Pride flag on her door. Alright, so turn to your partner and pick one of them, say which one is most interesting to you, and talk about the issues you see in that. Just kind of start it off.
What's interesting to me,
1, 2, or 3.
The most interesting.
Most interesting.
I would say, number 2 is the most interesting to me, because it's a trademark. What do you do with value? And they can't do that, period.
Okay, so you've got trademark issues in there. What else catches your attention about that one?
In a way, does that make it easier? That's the key, makes it easier. So I think that's what we can do.
Yeah, that makes it too easy to that, so this may be, but I don't have one.
think if students get together and they wanna express, however they wanna express.
So you're pointing out the fact that this is a student interest group.
It's a student interest group that wants to, express the fact that they're gay, and that's fine with me. I have no problem.
But just making sure that we are, our copyright logo, that whatever we're using, or anyone else that wants to use our logo.
Yeah, yeah, the logo's copyrighted, so that one's,
And they're gonna sell.
can't sell,
About 30 seconds to wrap it up and we'll come back.
but neither one of those matter to me. What matters to me is, my deal is that if the students come up with it on their own, then that's fine. But if the teacher influences them to do it, I think that's wrong.
So there's the two people, you know,
Yeah.
the student groups.
Yeah. If students wanna get together and do, you know, A, B, or C, that's their business. But when, they look as teachers as peers, obviously. And so if you're influencing them, hey, I think y'all should go do this, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, so you're talking about also
Should
looking
we get
at
to a good
just
spot?
an interest group, but ensuring that an interest group is indeed led by.
Like this, wrap up in about 10.
It's
This
not
is a
like
good hook.
There's no indoctrination, students get to
Those are all good points.
All right. Interesting hook. So just a quick share out. What did you guys check?
We actually talked through all of this.
Okay. Okay.
But
You're on it.
we had gone through this before and had some
Oh, right, that's right.
questions, so maybe someone else.
That's right, Ryan was part of that.
Yeah.
Brian and Carrie, which one did you guys talk about?
Gosh.
The first one? Two?
So number two, we looked at it from, well, first from the standpoint of our trademarks, our
Yeah.
copyrights.
Yeah.
So you get into this legal aspect of, okay, if we allow this, this group, this, what do you call it? I mean, interest group.
Yeah.
To modify our logo, then do we allow all, kind of getting back into that reasonable standard of, okay, if we allow them to do it,
Yeah.
then the other special interest groups, and then does it become an administrative burden of, oh my gosh. So, we looked at it from that standpoint.
Yeah. Kind of makes it a little clearer to be able to, like, yeah, that.
A little bit.
How about you?
We talk about all of them because
Yeah.
we're achievers.
Yeah, sure.
We kind of put the
I might
student one in
try.
its own category, it's student led.
Yeah.
The first and the
Okay.
third are,
Yeah.
I think, the tougher calls,
Yeah.
because it's staff.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and like, the whole, so, the first one, I think without words or explanation, just, is gonna create questions. So I think if you're gonna have something like that, there needs to be a learning unit where everybody on that call knows what that is, there has to be words, and there have to be an explanation. I don't think you can just put something like that, because it's gonna be open for interpretation. Some kids may take that as something very aggressive, and a negative. And somebody else who's educated, but has, a family education behind it, may see what it is and not think twice. Someone else might see it as empowering, but I think there's too much room for interpretation at that young age. So there has to be something.
So if it's grounded very clearly and explicitly in
In a
curriculum
learning.
covered by that grade,
Exactly.
in that grade standards.
That's what we both agreed on.
Nice.
And then on the bottom one, the council posted a pride flag on their doors. So for me, yes, I said, I'm skipping the middle one, for your sake, because you covered it. I just think the bottom one is the one that we've heard the most concern over. And I think, again, it's about context. I think it's about what's grade level appropriate, what age.
Yeah, notice I didn't put, what level that was.
I know you didn't
Nice.
say, so
Yep.
you did that on purpose, I think. But the other thing too is I think it also has to be posted with other inclusive kind of signage, not just that, but other things that make, if the idea behind it is to
Maybe
create inclusive.
disability, stuff.
If it's part of other, special interest groups or however you wanna phrase it, and then I think it becomes, that diffuses it a little bit as opposed to it just being a gay pride flag, that's like, I am an inclusive and open environment for just this one group of people.
Yeah, there's a unified club, that, special needs kids and.
Yeah, there's a lot of,
You
yeah.
could, and eliminate the R word was a big movement they did,
Mhm.
because the R word is used against people with Very good context, Ron. Thanks, Lisa.
Well, it was me and Stacy, I was just.
Well done, well done, well done.
Give me some
Anything to
ideas.
add? I mean, everybody covered it, but what do you
Yeah, I
add?
mean, we talked about the same stuff, and, you know, but that is a big deal for me, is that if they wanna put something on the door, then put it all on the door, or don't put anything on the door, you know? And then we talked about number two, I mean, the copyright and whatever, trademark, and, but my thing is that I have no problem, when students get together and they're student-led, I don't care what they wanna talk about, what they wanna do, I think that that's fine. It's when we, you know, when the teacher or somebody influences them to go do something, that's what I don't like, and that's what I hear complaints about. So, you know, if students wanna have the, you know, gay pride club, or Jewish club, or Christian club, or Republican club, or a Democrat club, whatever, the students do it.
Yeah.
And so,
Can I wanna add one thing to the gay pride flag on the door. And an instance that I know about, it's a safe zone. And it empowered this one incident, a student to tell, and I know this because it's firsthand, like, okay, well, I'm in my safe zone, so I can do whatever I want, and I'm not gonna get in trouble. You know, like, it was the behavior of this one child, who's like, well, no, you can't go tattle on me, I'm in my safe zone. And so I think that brought a lot of interesting, like, conversation at this school.
So it's the difference between just the flag and that message, that's
Yes.
different. Those
I
are-
mean, you
yeah.
know, and I'll go on record for this, I mean, like, you know, if a flag is making people feel good about themselves, and I feel like we're failing all children, we should be teaching everybody to love and respect and be kind, and so it bothers me that we have to have a flag to make someone feel that way. I mean, I wish that, and that's just not the world we live in anymore, you know, we live that is something that they look at, but I want all kids to feel like they can walk on our campus and every single teacher is going to love them, and every single teacher is going to respect them. So I agree with, if we're doing one, flag, we need to make sure we're inclusive to everyone, yeah.
Good point, good. Well, this is all meant to be kind of, to get the juices flowing. So here's the next thing now, so this is a question we've gotten, and you can kind of parse out the words, because the words have meanings, and so, people will ask, what's the district policy on political signs? Well, there's a lot of, you can push on each of those words, right? Policy is a very different thing, based on the context we talked about, board approved stuff versus just kind of what we normally do. What's a political sign, you know? And so let's start this one with another kind of I guess it's a turn and talk, let's see how it goes. I'm gonna show you some images that we've dealt with, and here's the question, okay? So this is the talk question. What are these signs, which ones would be an obvious issue if an administrator saw them? You would think, right? From your perspective, you think, I think that would be an issue, that would not be an issue, and why? Like I'm just an administrator walking around campus, and I see these various things, okay? So that's a projection up on the screen. That's on a wall. That's on a counselor's door, and it says safe zone, it's not that big, that's that little bubble is. That's on a wall, I guess presumably. That's, I think, on a office door, and that's out in front of the high school library. And you can't see it, but it says Trans Awareness Week. Alright, so take a second and look at those. And actually, let's just do this independently. You can think for a second which ones, give you a second to think, and then you'll talk to your partner about, just pick one that you want to talk about.
what is that on the bottom left?
The
That
bottom,
was a Woodridge, sorry, you go ahead.
yeah, it's a display out in the Fine Arts Building at Woodridge.
No, it's the-
Main lobby, main lobby. And it's, various colors, and it's pictures of kids, but with, overlay of different colors. So each of those little squares is a kid's picture, but it's in a different color going left to right.
Is it the whole school?
It's student art, and each student with their little face, and then there was
And it's laid out in
And
the same colors as the pride flag.
And at the top it says,
Is it-
the color of me is what it says at the top, you can't see that. Right.
Frank, do you know from having taken this picture on the picture, second one over, the bottom slide has 3, equality, equity, what is the phrase under that last?
I think it says,
Reality.
Reality, that's what it was? Because I remember we've gotten a bunch of stuff about that. Okay.
That was the one that really
Right.
fired.
I think it says liberation.
Now, there's another, I know there's one that says reality.
Yeah, so on the top right,
Top right.
it says reality, on the bottom one, it says liberation, in that third panel. Okay, so just gonna turn and talk again, let's take a couple of minutes, or actually, let's do one on this one. 1 minute.
Oh, one picture or 1 minute?
Just pick one picture and let's just see how we do, let's not take two.
Guys, you're walking through the hallways. Which one of these stands out?
Yeah, that's the question.
And then I think the two cases, those are presentations, so they would be, like they're part of a slideshow, I don't think they're posted on the wall.
Well, I think the presentation ones are, they're T-SLED. So my thing is, I just want to get out here. So for me, it's just, it's integration is that teach, requires us to, go about 10 things. What I mean by that is school pride. This, I got 10 things.
What our, character, the new team,
It's in the T.
yeah, gotcha.
And there's 10 of them. And I just want to know why we don't choose. And so that's my, so.
That would be that presentation one.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out, why did we talk about our country? Why did we talk about this? Why are we just always honing in on this?
So for context on that one, that was, a presentation by a teacher, that's for all. And her context was she was at Cambridge and these are the different countries that students identified as economically disadvantaged and not. And she was talking about her experience economically disadvantaged, and her point was, like this was, her point was that teachers saw her and provided her with extra support to make that. So that was the context of that. It was from the
Okay,
teacher,
so wrapping it up.
presentation. It wasn't done with students.
Well, so see,
But somehow.
there's always the devil in the
But somehow,
details.
the principal tweeted it, saying, I'm so proud of this teacher doing this. And it
All right.
in that context.
Now, if it's okay, let's don't do a share out on this one, but it's kind of a trick question, right? Because the idea is, you guys hit it earlier, somebody said, well, I need more information, right? And so, if you're an administrator, the answer is, all of them spur a conversation. Like, we're not, the point of this conversation is not to say which one was right or wrong, or whatever. The point is, if you're an administrator walking around, because remember, this is based on a training I did with the principals. And so I was trying to say, like all of these are conversations.
Right.
Like, you gotta stop and say, hey, tell me more about this, what's the purpose, how's this linked to your curriculum, that kind of thing. And so, you guys all got there, I heard that in a lot of different ones, but I think that this notion of, well, we need more information is very important in all aspects, both from the administrative perspective, but also I guess from the parent perspective, if you went to this, like, I need more information about this. And so, but yeah.
I have one comment, it's
Yeah,
just
sure.
a little one, but I do think it's important from the purpose behind having counselors on campus. So the one where the safe zone is placed over the pride flag, shouldn't it just, to me, if we just took that and moved it down to the right corner and just said, this is a safe zone.
This whole office is a safe
Yes.
zone.
Because that's what you need.
Great point.
You want everybody to feel like that's a safe place they can go for whatever's bothering them.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless the door is closed, then you gotta see the.
Well, then you gotta submit.
But presumably the
It's safe, but
secretary is
it's on
safe
hold.
as well.
Yeah.
Presumably.
She's safe too. No, that's a good point, that's really good, this is all great, so that's like, if you're an administrator walking through, have that conversation. Have that conversation with your professional employee, help them see the bigger picture, but 9 times out of 10, maybe 9.5 times out of 10, it's a, oh, thanks for pointing that out, let's fix that,
So I've got one just follow-up question. So if these things are going on, and, people will come out and say, what's your policy or whatever, I don't have the first clue, and so my question is really where do we stand on that.
That's his next slide.
That's good segue.
Okay, good. And then the other yeah, so my question would be, you know, at what point do we draw a line where some students need to learn, you know, religion or this or something else in their home
That's right.
and not at school?
That's right.
So thanks for the segue, Stacy, you're correct. Now,
One thing, just before we
Yeah.
segue off of it, I think it's important to point out when you made the comment about context, the picture of the rainbow, this bottom
Yeah.
one here, created a huge uproar. And it was because a parent made an assumption that this had anything to do with gay pride, and then blasted it out on social media, and then it got expanded, and as a result, our administration had to spend half a day calling parents to calm everyone down and explain, this isn't it. So, one thing, you know, we really do need is to get out the message to people. Slow down and get the context. If you have a question, what is this? Ask it, rather than don't explode it or make assumptions that there's something bad here. Like, you know, even the safe zone and the gay pride flag, we're making a bit of an assumption that, oh, this person is trying to set themselves apart as a safe zone just for pride flag. It may be that they're just thinking, this is a group that needs that message, you know, in particular. And they're not trying, and they don't realize that they're excluding others.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, the Woodridge one, if I'd have walked in and saw that, I would have said, oh, look at all the pretty colors.
That's what I
Yeah.
said.
That's what I
And
said.
that doesn't bother me
Right.
because it says the color of me. And if you actually look at the gay pride flag, it's opposite colors, okay? It's not, the dark colors are on the left.
what's interesting is some parents didn't see it that way.
Well, so, and we blame the media for that, y'all. I mean, the bottom line is that the media has instilled all of these awful feelings that people are feeling. And because our world is the way it is right now, you know, people are ultra sensitive. And so we need to be, you know, sensitive to those because it's a significant amount of people.
And we need
And
to-
I'm one of them. I mean, this
Yeah.
is political to me and I don't think it belongs in our schools. So not necessarily the Woodridge.
Right,
but
and we
everyone
need, but one thing is.
And I hate
important,
not saying
we need to
nothing.
calm
I
it
just
down.
hate not being able to say
When we
anything.
Get a
Yeah.
question like this, okay, let's slow down a bit and let's figure this out.
Ask questions, right?
Rainbows are still rainbows. I mean,
What?
What's that?
a
Thank
rainbow's
you.
still a rainbow. Everybody-
Exactly. Exactly.
Look like a rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Sorry.
wrong with
All right, and so, next, now, this is gonna take a second, so, I guess I can
Like,
give you, I'm
it's
gonna give
like-
you a moment to read it, because this, is what the rest of the presentation's essentially about, it's just kind of, this is what we gave to our principals, to use as their, and I'll be happy to give you guys the slides.
Okay, I just have to do it so I can
Yeah.
take.
Like, I wanna say like,
I wanna make a note right here
when
to
you
share,
were
the
like
slide.
in 5th grade or 4th grade and you saw a rainbow, did you automatically think that was good? Oh, sorry. But if I told you.
that? Is this in our legal?
That's all I thought.
No, this is
I'm gonna
just-
show you what's in our legal in a minute. This is kinda how we translated it for administrators to use as they're talking to their, teachers. Specifically in a team lead, like very specifically, you know, what we worked on that with, you talk to the team leads that talk through the big picture. So that's the language we use for principals. Here's where it's based from. Anything about it. Why does it take a complaint from me for you to act? You know, shouldn't all this be clear? I mean, don't you walk around and see these things? Well, you know, sometimes you don't see things and it takes somebody to point them out to you before you have the conversation, but here's the policy. Now, this is not something I shared with you guys before. And so this isn't legal. Now, it's important to note, this is not a statute. This is based on case law. Okay? And it is true, and that's what the lawyer is hinting at that they helped us to craft that previous thing you just read, is that case law pretty much establishes that as an employee, well, while they say you don't leave your constitutional rights at the door, you're also acting as an agent of the district, and so you don't really have an absolute right for free speech in the classroom. So that is true. Your main job is to cover the teats to teach what you're expecting from the curriculum standpoint, and also from the district standpoint. So like a profile of a learner, that's not in the TEKS, but we do expect our students to cover that. Our character ed program, that's kind of in the TEKS, but it's really a district driven thing. And so you're expected to cover those things. And beyond that, you don't really have, I guess the right is the way it's set here to cover other things. Now, but, okay, so I'm gonna go to the next thing now. It's also, but this is from local, but it's coming off of legal. But it's helpful for us, it was helpful for us. Now, the context of the next piece is to say, well, employees do have rights to join community groups, political groups, employee organizations. And we can't force them to do that, but they also have a right to do that. So you have a right to be a Republican, you have a right to be a Democrat, you have a right to be in a teacher's organization. You have a right to do a lot of things. And so, but these three criteria are kind of helpful. The point is that your participation in any of those kinds of groups shouldn't interfere with your assigned duties, like I mentioned previously. And number two, it shouldn't result in any political or social pressure being placed on students or parents or staff. Now the third one is not relevant to this conversation, but you shouldn't get traded, hey, I'm president of Little League. And I'm also the history teacher. And so these two things, I hope you'll see, there's kind of a balance, right? So imagine if you're a teacher and if you lean too heavily on the first one, you kind of shut down and you feel like it's a police state. And so that's why you have the second one, is to say, yeah, well, there's kind of a balance. You can be you, but you can't let it kind of interfere in these two realms, right? That's kind of how we've been using these to approach situations like this.
Are you also getting to the one that we talked about last year where once you do talk about something that's deemed controversial, you need to have a balanced view of those, or you have to.
Yeah, we don't cover that, we don't cover that in here.
Not here, okay,
But-
I mean, just to add.
But in our training we did, in our PE training with all the teachers.
Just for the benefit of the new trustees, I mean, to me, that's like the third triangle over here, or something that, because you can talk about, you may not have free speech, but you can go into controversial topics, it's just that you're not preaching them from your perspective. It's partially that inculcation, but even before before that bill, we still had that policy.
Yeah, we have a policy
I
about.
mean, Frank, I just thought that was helpful
No,
actually,
that's
when you
good.
shared that. I've told a lot of parents that when they call me on
Yeah.
controversial topics.
Yeah, and so I think we might have covered the new trustees, I'm not sure, but those are the three modules we did last April with all the teachers. We talked through how to cover things, and one of the key concepts from policy is you gotta do it objectively in an objective manner without your own political bias putting your thumb on it.
Okay, I mean, the one reason I brought up is I can think of like in my own sense class, the teacher puts up a political cartoon, and I'm not gonna get it right, but it's like, we live in a world where people don't believe in climate change, but they think that reality TV is real, or, something like that, where okay, the cartoon's up there, and I said, well, did y'all have a conversation about it? Did you have a conversation about climate change? And there wasn't a conversation. I mean, I'm not offended by that cartoon, but the concept is, when you throw controversy into the classroom, that's not inculcation, because it's not repeated teaching, but you're not inviting the students to engage on that controversy, and so I don't know that it really has a place in the classroom.
So,
Especially
to
in
me,
sixth grade. I mean,
In
it
sixth
depends
grade,
on how your brain is
it's like
like.
using your platform, this is my perspective as a teacher. So I mean, to me, that, I don't know, that fits into this, it's an important part of that conversation.
So I'm curious, I'm not the lawyer here, so,
But you played one.
but I, and so, I'm trying to, when it says however, that's always a good segue into, here's the rules, but, okay, neither an employee nor anyone else has an absolute constitutional right to use all parts of the school building or immediate environment, which is your area right next to you. Call it the hallway.
Right, outside your
Okay.
classroom.
And then it says, so what I'm reading is that you don't have free speech rights.
You don't have absolute, but that's.
You don't have absolute free speech rights to do that.
The employee.
The
So you're not-
employee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
That's
like
right.
you never did. In other contexts, the famous one is, you can't sit in a movie theater and yell fire.
Correct.
So that's not covered by free speech. But I think what Stacy's pointing to is really the heart of this is, look, there are going to be challenging topics taught. That is education. I mean, if we're not challenging our kids and making them a little bit uncomfortable, we're not teaching, whether it's math or whatever. But we have to do it in a balanced way. And I think that's where the training that we were briefed on last year was so good with working with these teachers. The more, you reference politicized environments, and it is, that's the reality we live in. So teachers are being put in a position of having to address these hot political ideas. Okay, let's train them so that they can present it in a balanced way, because that way the student ultimately makes their own decision.
Yeah.
And that's the heart of education.
That's right, and I think that's why I wanted to bring it up, Frank, is that when we start to talk about this, what I worry about is, we don't wanna whitewash Alamo Heights ISD, I don't mean that in the racial sense, I mean it in the sense that you take all the curriculum and you just make it real dull. We're never talking about anything hard, we're never gonna talk about controversy, we're definitely not gonna talk about politics.
Good point.
You can't take controversy out of the classroom, and I don't want us to at Alamo Heights, and so it's how to teach it, not whether to teach it, and so I'm on Brian's
really
page
good,
there, and that's
yeah.
why I wanted to
That's a
bring
good
it up
way to
now.
say it.
Yeah,
Well, I
and
appreciate
agree,
you saying it for this group, but also I appreciate you saying it for the general public, because if you only saw this and didn't know all that other stuff, you might walk away with a different perspective.
Right.
That's helpful.
I also think that the class has the contents, like, my kid's walking into a history class, I want that child to learn every dirty thing that ever
That's
happened,
right, yeah.
every horrible thing that this country did or didn't do or has done or whatever. But that's in history class.
Yeah.
Same thing with English, you can dive into these things, same thing with social studies. But when they go to math,
Yeah, they should not hear anything about it.
I want them to learn math.
I agree. The hard thing there is we also have a legislature that's telling us you have to put ideas into every course. So suddenly your word problems in
Where-
math
where-
have to have
that?
socioeconomic ideas.
Back here. What legislature says we have to put?
Texas, we have to,
Where is this
we have to
at?
incorporate the socioeconomic or
Does it say that?
Where,
I don't know what you're referencing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering,
I'd like to see,
start
let's see
teaching
that.
other,
I can see that.
like in basket weaving?
like, no, because I was wondering, because like math word problems suddenly became these bizarre issues that were stupid, because a math problem is hard enough as is.
so I'm wondering, Ryan, if, before we mentioned the fact that we had a math lesson that was on is $20 an hour a livable wage. And that was a math lesson that the teacher, well-intentioned, trying to find something that would be authentic to kids, but it hit some students really hard. Like sensitive issues is in the eye of the beholder, and so that may be, and so I love the way you phrased it, Stacy, about really making sure our teachers know how to teach us, not whether to teach, because we do want them to couch math in an authentic way and authentic problems, and that may be perceived as sensitive by some kids. Is that?
Maybe that's,
Maybe that's
I
what you're
remember
doing.
that example, but I thought
Well, there
was
is,
something that we were required to do.
in Senate Bill 3, part of what they passed was that the state board does have to make sure the social studies teachers have all these things about the free enterprise system, which is already in economics. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it could be, I read an article interpreting it and twisting one,
Yeah, New York Times.
so.
So I do have 2 more slides.
Keep going, that's okay.
Yeah,
And so
sorry.
this is a summary then, right? So this is a summary of our conversations with administrators. And it's helpful for everyone to know as well. So there's literally no statute that prohibits, quote, political signs in legal policy. And so it is true when someone says, what's your policy about political signs? But then there's not literally a policy written that says this or that about political signs. It's all by inference, right? It's all by inference based on what you just saw. Now,
Thank you.
the second point is that case law does establish, like we just talked about, that employees do not have a right to post quote political signs at work. Like that's pretty clear. But in between 1 and 2, there's a lot of area that's where we work in. That's what professionals do, and that's what professional organizations our approach has been to respond to the individual issues when they arise, and there have not been many. And this is, I think we had a conversation with a parent one time, they say, look, we want to dwell on that for a second, because, there just haven't been. I mean, when you add up all the teachers we have and how many issues we've been brought to the attention of the principal, while they might feel like it's a huge number, it's not a huge number. And every individual instance we've dealt with our professionals have been very constructive. They've all learned, we've moved forward, and we've gotten better at it. That's been our approach so far. Here's what we have not done. We have not issued an explicit statement listing what you can and can't put out in your classrooms.
And they can't put a Star of David or a cross.
That's correct, but that's a whole other, that's a whole
Separation.
other.
That's church and state, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other. Now, so what we're trying to do in avoiding explicit statements about like listing things you can't do is that you guys know this, we're celebrating teachers right now in February. The foundation is, we hire very creative professionals, and good management suggests that when one person's messing up, you talk to that person, you don't make a rule for everybody. You just go talk to that person, you fix it, you move on. And the second thing was, if we more explicit with a list of things people shouldn't do, is that the negative impact morale is just not, we don't think it'd be worth the trade-off. We feel like these individual conversations are a better way to handle it. And so, we want everyone to know as well, though, that administrators, like, we don't, when somebody says, why does it take me to complain? It says, trust me, I don't want you to complain. Like, I would love to catch all of these instances before anybody has an issue with that. But just sometimes, you don't know what's going on, or people just don't see it unless somebody brings it to your attention. That's part of the democratic process. You see something, you say something to the administrator, you get more information, you talk about it. That's what the summary of how we've been addressing it.
And I'll also just say, and I'll end on this, important to you, but I'm proud, do you have bullets on this? Go for it.
Okay.
Right.
So here's the thing we ended with the administrators, and this is a point that I think Terry kind of made this point earlier. We all have to be aware that some parents have heightened sensitivity to signs like these, on both sides. I mean, we just have to know that, and if you're not sensitive about it, doesn't mean that that's the way it is. You just need to know that people have a heightened sensitivity about things like this. We also have to know that, and this goes for everybody, not just administrators, but for teachers, your own individual perspective might lead you to overlook something that somebody else feels like is offensive or political or inappropriate. In fact, as professionals, as supervisors, we just have to kind of be more aware of that than other folks, I think.
So my comments were gonna be about these two bullets, so I'm gonna stop you here and just say that I'm proud of our administrators for the way that they have handled both the sensitivity of parents, but also the sensitivity of our staff members. And having conversations, constructive conversations, that help everyone involved understand how a perspective leads to overlooking, or a perspective leads to unintended consequences or unintended feelings. And so you've had lots of conversations one-on-one with teachers to try to explain, this brings up these feelings, and let's talk about it. If that's not, I feel like that's your intent. It takes a lot of time for administrators to have these conversations, and I feel like overall, that's the positive culture in this district, is that those conversations are transformative, and they treat our staff members with dignity and respect, treats our parents with dignity and respect as we walk through some of the challenges around this.
Now, when you say, hey, if you ever feel stuck, give us a call and let's make sure we talk it through. Don't not address it. We have great administrators, they will always address it. And they will always call us when they need. We just want to reiterate that. Now, the other thing is that I think this is true, at least from a few conversations I've had. I want all of our supervisors to understand that the degree to which we don't catch things like this and they become complaints and we have to deal with them, I just want people to know, fairly or not, it feeds a narrative that we're trying to inculcate stuff to our kids. And And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, I'm just saying some people that I've talked to feel like that that's the case, and so I just wanna kinda heighten our awareness to avoid that. The other thing is, the degree to which we do address these feeds the narrative that we're stifling kids and marginalized, that have certain needs. I'm not saying that's fair or not, I'm just saying that that's just kind of the position we're in. And so while all of us being aware of that, it just kinda helps us to walk through that. And so we had a great conversation about this whenever that was with the PD, and so I thank you for the time to share this with you as well. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one thing we as a board can do, since we are the bridge to the community, is share the message of if issues come up, look, we're addressing, we're not afraid to address issues as they come up, they need to be addressed. But it isn't indicative of some intent to, you know, indoctrinate students. I don't think we have any widespread issues regarding that. That's my observation.
Yeah, I would agree that it's not widespread.
There could be.
You just kind of you're on your heels when the, you know, perception's reality, right? And so, you know, when it comes across to a board member that why do y'all embrace this or that, and you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know, you know, and so,
Do you feel like you're better able to respond to that now?
I feel like, well, I think that my response now will be, the same it was before, is that I think that it's going to be him.
Yeah.
I don't think that we had a kumbaya, on, you know, big meeting on Monday, decided to roll out the books on Tuesday. That did not happen. And so, you know, or whatever. And so, I think that the perception is that we're kind of behind the scenes, you know, making sure that we put out these nuggets. Does that make sense? And so that's what I'm trying to.
What kind of nuggets do you?
Well, like all those pictures, you know, like we're scheming
Yeah.
to do these things. And I don't believe that to be true.
And that's a great point, just really assuming positive intent on the part of our employees.
Right.
It's really important for you as trustees to walk through and understanding that, you know, that perspective piece, just when conversations are had about the perspective, I don't know, I
Mistakes can be
Well,
made.
you know what I say a lot of times? I say, look, we have 1,000 employees, okay? 1,000. So let's take 1%, 10, that might think differently than you, or might have, you know, passion about this or that, and they want to share it. And we just deal with it as it happens. And you know what? They might be right, might be wrong, doesn't matter, you know? But we can't just blow the whole thing up because one or two people want to do something.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is that when you do a carte blanche, you know, hey, you may never have you know, a donkey or a elephant in your room ever again. Then everybody else is kind of like, well, this place stinks.
Yeah.
I don't want to come here.
Amen.
And so I get that.
Yeah, you address it on a personal basis.
I mean, I know teachers that are part of the, that's fine, that's their
That's
choice.
life.
Yeah. Right.
That's life.
Welcome to
All right,
America.
thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you all.
As always, that's a good one. Okay, we're gonna move on to the class rank discussion.
Do we need a stand-up break?
Yeah, do you guys want a quick break?
Like, I'm just checking in, we've got this.
I want a sit down break. Let's go.
For y'all's last,
We're gonna call out.
Yes, yes. yes.
How's your John now?
We're not having executive today, we're gonna do it at Thursday.
Yeah.
Figuring it out still.
That's the last one. We have 45 minutes for
You're sitting aside, but this or what?
for the class rank. That's our last.
No, you have my phone.
And then they're gonna do you.
No, that's our last.
Want to do that today?
Oh, or you can.
Probably better to do that, but.
It's not fit in an agenda item here. So,
Okay.
but I gave you all the details in that email, there's nothing
Yeah.
new to that. But I'm happy to question it.
No problem, Florida, we picked it up on a thing.
Oh, man, I'm so tired. I was up at 3:45. Been just on airplane.
I actually have the charger.
Nationals. Cheer nationals. What time do we leave?
5:30.
What?
Is it in Orlando again?
Yes.
I get on a plane today and I haven't packed. But it's not.
Where are you off to? Someplace fun? you're doing
Kiowa
the
Island.
Savannah, Kiowa.
Yeah.
Good. That'll be fun. Is the weather gonna be pretty nice?
Yeah, it's a little,
Low
Where are you going?
60s,
Key West.
mid-40s, low.
where
Oh.
you should be,
Oh, yeah, I'm not going.
I know.
I'm not going, well, when it's this weekend.
Yeah, really.
And no, we never plan on it, because I plan on going to Disney World, but I'm not going. But yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be really fun.
That
It's
stinks.
just hard to
We
get.
can actually get started.
Yeah, you
We
ready?
said, yeah.
Okay, and Lisa will have fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you ready?
We can, yeah, Lisa, we're gonna come back.
We don't have, we have a quorum.
So we're going to do, all right, just so that this discussion, you're gonna do a presentation first. We're gonna try and let them get through all of the slides, and then we'll have discussion. We can do clarifying questions and then discuss this issue.
So, thanks for that, that's a perfect setup, because one thing we know when we talk about class rank, like this touches all 4,819 students in our district, every child in the you have folks like Lisa and Ryan who have been through it with their own kids, Clay who's going through it right now, and then you guys, your oldest is junior school,
No, high school.
high school
Freshman.
freshman, okay. So at different points, so everyone's bringing like their own experience. So when we were designing this learning time, we know the most important thing is gonna be the discussion, but we want us, when we get to that discussion point, to everyone have some common information together. So we're gonna talk through our policy, we're gonna talk through our practices, we're gonna talk through historic context. So when we get to the important part, which is the discussion, we're all coming from kind of a similar starting point there. So this,
So I'm gonna just reiterate, she's got a lot to present here, so if we could
It's
just be
10
disciplined.
slides.
She's got an anchor slide where we're gonna ask you some real specific, questions about direction moving forward. And so jot down your questions, jot down,
So don't interrupt, in
comments.
other words.
Don't
I just feel like this
Okay,
could take
I got it.
4 hours.
That was spoken like a mom. No
Just tell me the
interruption.
truth, what do you want from us today?
Alright.
so we'll start, like this is gonna, it'll build up in layers. So Frank, you're talking through, and Frank and I are gonna kind of go
Yeah,
back and
and,
forth
and
on
so
this.
we're trying to figure out a way how to, kind of, set up the different buckets that we need to talk through things, and so we felt like we could circle back to that team of 8 training in August when we talked about what the board's role is, what the superintendent's role is. And so essentially, I'm adding a third bucket, which is the law, right? And so, so there's anything that's in legal policies is the law. That's kind of like, we can't have no choice over that. Anything that's local policy is the stuff that's your policy, that's the trustee's policy. And then anything beyond that is administrative stuff, and that's just based on the policy, is how we implement that. And so sometimes that's a regulation, sometimes that's not. And so, as we frame it, I think it's helpful to think of those 3 terms. So what's legal policy that we can't really change, we have to work within? And then what's local policy, which is you guys can certainly decide to change or not if you want. And then the administrative stuff is all the ripples on if you guys decide to change stuff or not. So those are kind of the 3 buckets that we're talking about. If that
That's
makes
great.
sense. Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to make sure that we had Corey with us today, because as we are talking about policy and potential administrative implications, and we'll bring back Corey with us as well.
Yeah.
So we'll start just by the way we always try to frame big discussions, and that's through, it's not separate and apart from who we are and what is our mission. So it's making sure that as we do talk about class rank, that we stay grounded in our mission. And so our mission, heart of our community, passion is excellence, educate, empower every student, excel academically, and as a confident, compassionate citizen. And I pulled out just 2 parts from profile that I think are so relevant as we're talking about class rank and how it impacts students. The first one is develop a healthy sense of self and make thoughtful choices, to include thoughtful choices about the courses you're gonna take that cultivate fulfillment and a balanced life. Well, that certainly is relevant in conversations about class rank. The second is seek knowledge and understanding and master a broad and rich essentials we're talking about class rank. grading symposiums back in 2018. Lisa, were you there?
You were there, Bonnie was there.
Lisa was there, Bonnie, Margaret. So, we talked through this last month when we were talking about the grading and Blessed Hope. But we did in 2018-19, we had a huge community conversation about grading. We brought in an outside speaker. We had over 100 people come for a full day learning time, talking about grading. And what emerged from that was our grading guidelines, and our definition of grading is a communication of content mastery, not a reward, not a punishment. And at the end of the day, each table, and you can see we had students, counselors, administrators, teachers, parents, all sitting together in tables. Each table created a poster, and the poster had 3 musts, like what are things we need to do now, what are things we want to do, and what's a big wish. And a top wish across all the groups, across all the days was reconsider class rank or begin a conversation about it. So we were getting poised at that point in 2019 to open up this as a larger community conversation, and you all know what happened. It just got pushed to the back burner.
I would also clarify that our board gave us some directions as far as those 3 musts, of things that they wanted us to prioritize and walk through. And so we've been chipping away at that, and we've made many presentations to y'all about
Correct.
what we've been working on.
Into that. So was we stay grounded in mission and vision, and we think about, well, how are we doing now? Does it align with our mission and vision? And if you ask most parents and say, define success when your student graduates from high school? How would you know they're successful? How would you know that this has been a student who's had a successful experience? And most of what you would hear, being really pragmatic, is you would hear they have a high grade point average, they need good grades. They had a high class rank. Even better, stronger indicator of success, they were in that top 10%, or that top 6%, that elite 6%, then they've been accepted into a competitive college. We hold these beliefs as that defines success. Well, our beliefs influence our behaviors, so if we hold that belief, the behaviors, it influences our course selection. You talk to high school students and ask, have you ever selected a course just because of the multiplier? Or you didn't take a course because it didn't have a multiplier and you didn't want to drop in rank. So our beliefs are driving our behavior. And you can see how those, when we just talked about our profile, there's some tension there. If we hold those beliefs, it also encourages gaming of the system, which we did talk about. We talked about Blessed Hope and some students trying to take a course outside so it wouldn't be included in their GPA. And then we just have to live in, like, it also adds stress. When you spend X number of years, at least 4, oftentimes more, worried about, am I going to have the GPA I need? Am I going to have the class rank I need? It just adds stress to our students and our families and our teachers. So then whatever direction we follow afterwards is to align how we are measuring student success with our Alamo Heights mission and our profile of a learner. That whatever we put out is saying this is what defines success, how we are ranking and measuring does have some alignment with what we're holding true with our values as a community. So next steps and a tentative timeline for this, because I said this is a big deal. Everything we talk about in this room is a big deal, but this is one that impacts everyone, everybody. So we have this board learning time. What we want out of this is a clear direction. Consider this, consider that, we want to move forward, we want status quo. And then we're going to establish some key questions. What is it we need to know? What needs to be, what are the key things we need to find out? Then we go into this process part here, where whatever questions are asked, whatever we ask, we need to answer. We do need to engage with our community. We need to engage with our high school site base. We need to engage with our teachers at the high school, our student council at the high school, community engagement in this. And then, of course, if there is policy changes that to be considered, that's a process that involves our policy experts, our legal experts, to get those words just right. So that, after we have a learning time that sets the direction, sets key questions, then we go into this process part, And then it ends with a public presentation of recommendations. This would be in a formal school board meeting. It would also be informally in summer communication, fall communication, because again, whatever direction, any changes that are made, we wanna make sure that our community is well informed of them. So Frank, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
You guys have handouts in your folder. Like I mentioned previously, the local is our policy. I want to review that, but I also gave you the legal in case you wanted to see it. Or maybe I should. And so, there's 4 pages of legal, but what I wanted to tease out is, it all goes back to this law about automatic admission, right? So the legislature a while back passed a law that says if you're in the top 10%, you get automatically admitted into a public university. And so that spurs a couple of dominoes. And so the law is, that means you have to identify a top 10%. And then they also talk about how they standardize rankings to make sure that you're doing that. But it's EIC legal on page 1 of 4 at the very top 10%. Now, it also says that students who graduate in the top 25% could be admitted, but as far, and I checked yesterday with AHISD legal, it doesn't look like universities are really, maybe UTSA I think does something for top 25%. Texas Tech. Universally, most folks, everybody does the top 10%, and only a few do the top 25%. But we're still required to do some notifications of that. Okay, so that's one. Now, the other one that's not ever really an issue, but it's down in the middle of the page, valedictorian. We have to identify a valedictorian and report it, because there's a law that says they get to go to school, to a state school for a certain way. Now, on page 2, the law says that we have to disseminate information about this automatic admission to, guess who? Kids that are in the running for the top 10% and for the top 25%. And in that part, it tells you, going on to page 3, it tells you what you shall do. Now remember, in the law, anytime it says shall, it means you gotta do it. And so it lists different times you have to tell kids, like you have, before they, there's another trigger that you tell them in 10th and 11th grade, and then there's a final trigger to juniors and seniors. And the purpose of that is really for their applying to colleges. And so that triggers like no later than the 14th day after the first semester. So those are just kind of like these things that we absolutely have to do. And that's really all I wanted to point out. And so those are really, it's not a lot, but it's just, those are the parameters you work within. Now, the local then, you take from the local, and it doesn't really address much of that. Our local is really about, and I'm going to go to local, I'm on EIC local, page 1 of 3. I just want to highlight 5 things. Not all of you might not want to change anything, you might want to keep it exactly the same, but these are the things that impact class rank. And so on the top, number 1 on page, it says calculation. So that just says we calculate a class rank for everybody. So if you decide to change that, you'd have to change that part. Number 2 is right below it, exclusions. That's saying these are the various things that we do not include in GPA. You can decide to change that or not. We had a little bit of conversation about that last time. 3, weighting classes. For a long time, we've said if you're taking an AP class, a pre-AP class, or a dual credit class, you get extra points to acknowledge all the extra work it takes to be in those classes. So that's another policy decision. You can keep the same or change, but that all impacts GPA. Number 4 is on the next page, local graduation honors. We actually changed this a few years ago. I don't know if, I think Lisa might remember. Yeah. We changed the terminology, right? So we have cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, graduates, and then their cut points. Those are based on on GPA. They're not based on. All can stay the same. Number 5, I don't know that you want to, but I thought I'd point it out. Valedictorian salutatorian. That determines, this policy talks about identifying them. It also says that they have to have attended Alamo Heights for 4 semesters. Different districts have different things, but we,
4 years or 4 semesters?
4 semesters. And some, and I wanted to say, it was in the recent past, we changed, we had somebody move in,
Senior year.
yeah, senior year, it was a mess, but,
Fish became that.
okay, it was a mess. Anyway, so the board made that very clear. And then it's also about tiebreakers, that hasn't been an issue, but I think most districts that I'm aware of have a little tiebreaker issue, just in case it is an issue. And then, that's those are the 5 things in policy I wanted to point out. Those are local policies that, might impact, GPA.
Thanks, Frank, you always do a good job of summarizing that. So this, I hope you can read this. So that's what's in policy. Now we go to what's in practice. And so I've worked with Amanda in the counseling department to verify that everything up here is what we're doing. So this is accurate. So weighted class ranks are included on the transcript, it's a numerical. There is an FAQ that has all this information that is on the counseling webpage. And then I'm gonna go through this because it talks directly links to what Frank was just saying about policy. So automatic admission policies are shared with every incoming 9th grader as an 8th grader during their transition conferences. If you all remember going through that, counselors go down to the junior school, but when they're talking through all of this, like the main point of that conversation is graduation requirements, but automatic admission is part of it, but the main point is you need 4 Englishes, here's what you need. It then is also done during fall advisory at freshman year and sophomore year. Again, freshman year, it's still more about, here's what you need to do to graduate, but automatic admission is included in freshman year. It's included when counselors go into advisory in sophomore year, and then it's again with students in the top 10% during junior conferences, where it's a one-on-one with the counselor, the junior, and the family, and students complete a Google form acknowledging receipt of the information about automatic admission. So here I've broken that information down by grade level, so you can see it kind of chronologically. So we already talked about they do get beginning information as they enter 8th grader and then advisory in 9th, but in 10th grade, class rank really takes a larger part of the conversation. So in September, there's a guidance lesson that does include it. Class rank is posted in half with 2 semesters, taking into account summer school and any new students. 11th grade, in October, a 4-semester rank is posted that does include summer school. In June, there is a 6-semester rank that's posted. All of this is posted in HAC. That June 6-semester rank is what's used for college admission decisions until fall rank is completed. So in September, there is a 6-semester rank that includes anything over the summer. And in January, this is the 7-semester rank that includes any new students. And this one's a big deal because this is the one that also has, as Frank was talking about, the graduation distinction, and we announce our top 10 graduates at senior awards based on 7-semester rank. And then in May, after any final exams are done, everything's completed, we have final 8-semester rank, and that's what's done at graduation. So that's kind of how the dissemination takes place and when it takes place. So the next is, just as you do consider some policy options and some of the research we may need to do to get questions answered for you, one thing to consider is just reporting rank. We are obligated for the top 10%. Many districts have limited their ranking to just that. You can consider inclusions. Friendswood does something where they separate out, you have your personal GPA. It's every class you've taken. This is what you use for colleges, your personal GPA. but there is a separate local ranking GPA that is only core courses. And in Friendswood, they only share, like the top 10%, they get notified, and then they do share what was the cut score for top 10%. Our top 10% cut score was a 101.23. So you know, oh wow, I'm at a 97, I'm not near top 10%, or wow, I'm a 101.1. I'm pretty close to top 10%. So that's how they do it. Part of the reason they do this ranking GPA separate from the personal GPA is going back to our conversation we had last month about students not choosing to take culinary because it'll impact. But if your class rank, that is your automatic admission, is only core courses, go ahead and take culinary. Go ahead and stay in band. So that was their motivation for doing it. We talked last month about the Highland Park. They also only rank top 10%, but they have an exclusion waiver where students can complete a waiver through counselors and say, I would like for these 2 courses from a list to be excluded from GPA calculations. The numerical grade still goes on the transcript, but the course is excluded from GPA. Cypress Fairbanks is something similar. We have an approved list. Kids can have 2 courses, but it's pass-fail instead of having a grade on the transcript. So this conversation that we're having here in Alamo Heights, it's all over the place happening, and each community has to figure out what works for them. So this is going back to where Dana was taking us. We're getting to the point of discussion, and when we say policy direction needed, back to Frank's kind of 5 things we could consider, and thinking through, do we want to consider everything at this time? Do we want to prioritize, start with one thing now? But we could, status quo, no changes at this time. We can take the direction of only walking down the path of ranking just top 10%. We can consider multiplier, the scope, necessity, and impact of course weight. The inclusion of, well, kind of the Friendswood model of we're only including core classes. We can talk about the exclusion, which is in policy, what would be excluded, maybe the contract like Highland Park does. And as Frank said, honor graduates are also part of that EIC policy. So all of those are things we can talk about, but we would need direction from you all about which are most essential to consider now. So now, thank you all. I'm gonna say thank you for being so patient and letting me get through that. Like genuinely, thank you for that. I know you've got questions, but here's the things that we like to talk through, and I'm gonna give you a minute to collect your thoughts, maybe write down some notes, and then we'll have discussion.
And it's really important in this process, and many of you asked me repeatedly to keep us in our lane. And so let's remember that policy is the EIC local. And so that policy has practice implications, right? Like you saw, the practices are the administrative practices that result from the policy decisions and directions that you point us to. But at this point, we've got to stay anchored in policy to kind of understand. So when you're looking at these questions and you're jotting down your notes before Jimmy does that protocol for us to share out, anchor in the policy. And Jimmy, go to the next slide real quick again, because I think it's important. Like, these are the policy considerations that we need to start with. It will impact practice, but at this point, we're not in the weeds about practice. Okay.
So the question is, what policy change, if any, does the board want to consider at this time? And then what questions need to be asked and answered before considering changes to class rank policy and administrative practices? And y'all, this is really important. What questions and concerns are likely to be in the minds of our local community? So I'm gonna give you a moment kind of to collect your thoughts, and then we'll just go around and everyone kind of share out your thoughts, and then we'll go from there.
Can we ask a couple of
Yeah.
clarifying
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
This is just clarifying for now. When you, for core courses, when these different programs, when they say core courses, are the core courses defined by the state, the courses that are required for graduation, or can each district define its own set of
Each
courses?
district can define it themselves. One district just had Yeah.
science, social
the
studies.
4x4.
Okay.
And, Friendswood includes world languages. So
Okay.
each district has,
So we would have some
Correct.
flexibility on how
Great
we
question.
define, okay.
what else? Clarifying question.
When you say posted, you use that word a couple of times, posted and hacked. Having not gone through it yet, can you explain exactly like how that reads? I understand hack, and I've logged into hack, but like if I logged in for Conway, can you explain exactly what I would see?
When you log in, you're gonna go, transcript, well, it's, I think it is,
It's
there's where you
transcript.
have transcript, and then you have to go down, because it does it like, semester by semester, so you have to go past the years.
Okay.
And then at the bottom, it says class rank, and it's a numerical.
So 36
Out
/ 360.
Correct.
So you know, okay, and that's all it says.
So it's, yeah.
So clarifying question for me, because I've read it all,
Mhm.
and I obviously have lots of questions. But before we get into it, and I mentioned this to you, Ron, I don't know if you're gonna answer, but our current policy, local, it says that here it was adopted February 1st. So I wanna know,
So there's a revision, yeah,
so what was the revision?
it was in the last meeting, and that's, we changed the term pre-AP to advanced.
That's good, thanks, Frank.
So if you
Okay,
recall,
so-
that's all, it
So
was
that's
just
the
that
only
one, that's
difference
it, that only
in
revision.
policy.
That was the only revision,
So,
yeah.
okay, that helps me with
Yeah.
my
That's
questions.
good. Thank you. Any other clarifying
Well,
questions?
yeah, I have actually a lot since I'm new to it. So we decide the multiplier, but when children are applying at different colleges, how are they comparing apples to apples if we have a 1.1 multiplier and let's just say Highland Park's multiplier is 1.6? I mean, I'm making that up, I have no idea.
I can answer that.
I'm expert.
So the way that most schools do it is they throw out our multiplier, and they do their unweighted. They do, yeah, they start with unweighted, and then they decide how they weight advanced, which is actually us raising from pre-AP to advanced makes us much more consistent with other schools across the state
Okay,
and other states. And pre-AP is sort of a not
yeah,
widely used term. But, so, they may weight AP, like, we don't weight AP any higher than advanced, but Texas A&M does. So you put your grade in, and there's a drop-down box that says, was it advanced, was it pre-AP, was it IB, and then they assign a weight. You never see it, you don't know how they,
oh,
and other than they say, there's a box that says, are you in the first quarter? So we see kids that aren't in the first quarter by our standards, in the first quarter by A&M standards, and vice versa. So,
okay,
that's really how they do it, kind of behind the scenes, they don't actually
oh,
post that out there, a few schools do. But, because GPA is like, it's totally different at every school, how they weight it.
yeah,
Some add just points, it's not a multiplier,
yeah,
and so, and it's on all different kinds of scales, so the schools have a way behind the scenes that and that's why they ask for your transcript, and on all the transcripts, it's coded the same.
okay,
So a similar
Advanced,
question,
pre-AP,
okay.
like the exclusions that we saw, so the colleges kind of know, hey, Highland Park does it this way, Edgewood does it this way, and they bring it
It's
back
all
to
part
how
of your
they
school
want to
profile
do it.
that goes with every kid's, when a kid applies to college, the school profile, which
Okay.
line items that out, goes with every single kid's transcript.
So, okay, my other question to all of y'all, I guess, is, for a non-top quarter child, I would think that taking a culinary or taking a, that's helping that child significantly. So by taking away and I'm just trying to understand, I'm asking questions. By taking that away from those children, is it only really benefiting those who are in the top 10% who have over 100? I mean, I wanna make sure every child is we're considering every single child,
Are
not
you
just the
talking
top
about
10.
if we only did the core courses?
Yeah, sorry, I just.
So that's why Friendswood separated it. Your personal GPA includes culinary, includes everything.
Okay, and that's what matters in college.
You're putting all of it on your transcript. They said to get their top 10%,
Yeah,
they only looked at core courses
okay,
because they only ranked top 10%.
okay,
But even those in the top 10% have a personal GPA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lisa, is
absolutely.
that exactly what you said
I
earlier
think something
about?
that's important to understand and consider is when you take that rank away, aside from the top 10%, is that you are forcing colleges to look at every student holistically.
Yes, I agree.
And so you're gonna see a greater percentage of our students that are not in the top quarter,
Yeah.
you know, being reviewed and accepted at some schools.
So adding on to that,
That's why
when
the
we,
rank is.
when we get to the part about what questions, your question about how is this playing out in other districts?
Yeah.
That would be something we can get into and get you some specific information.
Okay.
So we're gonna go
I don't
around the
really
circle?
understand, I don't really understand.
Yeah, so I think have I answered all the
Well,
questions?
Yeah, do we have
I
any
have
other
more
clarifying?
questions for y'all.
All right,
Since I'm
so-
new.
I have a clarifying
Yeah.
question about the Friendswood model. I don't really understand the difference in the two. You're saying a personal GPA and a reported GPA, but
Ranking, it's their top 10. How do they get their top 10%? They're only looking at those core
So to
classes.
frame this in our action
Yeah.
steps, I would say that you're gonna recommend that we investigate.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
So that's
I
what we
wanna-
need our
I
marching
think we
orders.
wanna
I
understand
wanna
that better.
learn
Yeah.
more about
Yeah.
that, so.
thank you for that.
Wait,
I'm good to.
Go ahead.
When would any change take effect? Like what class would the change
It would have to
impact,
be an
first
income.
impact?
So we've never done a policy change, it would be eighth graders coming in for next year if we,
Assuming a change was made prior to the start of next school year.
correct?
Is that, okay?
Correct.
So those who are in school now, any change we make, they're living under the rules as they're written now.
Yeah, because think about it, they've made their decisions of their classes and
Yeah.
everything based on what they knew when they came in, so it wouldn't really be fair to change
Change
it
the rules of the game.
in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah, no, I
That's
get it.
great.
And then also, one other thing, I have a hard stop in 10 minutes, and I love the slide about the process. I'd love for this to be continued, especially missing two other
We've got a
board
ways
trusts.
to go.
Okay, I just wanna make sure this isn't like,
But
We
we
have
need
to
to
do
take
this
away
in the
from you
next-
all, what is it that you want us to investigate? What, you know, what,
Yep.
what are our marching orders as far
So
as
let's
bringing
go.
information to you so that we're informed enough to make a recommendation if we do wanna consider change?
So one would be, find out more about the way Friendswood does it, cause I'm curious about that.
So that's the inclusions. Okay.
So, can I say something?
Yes.
Okay,
Of
good.
course.
Alright, so I read legal, and I read the local, then I read our practices. So my first question is, on our practices, why do we numerically rank the sophomores? Which basically we're ranking freshmen. And why I ask that is because it's not in legal, it's not in local, and it's not in our practices. So I'm just curious why we even do that.
It isn't
It
legal.
is no-
It is in where? Not in what I got.
Legal.
It's not in legal.
The-
The law requires that sophomore class, after their first year, the law requires that we have to let the top 25% know that they were in the top
That is
25%.
correct. No
That's
one's
correct.
arguing that.
Right,
Yeah.
so it just says we have to let them know that they're in the top 25%. It does not say that we have to numerically tell them how they're ranked.
Correct.
And so that's my question, why are we doing this when local, which is in our lane, doesn't require us to do this?
Well, yeah, so to answer the question, Clay, you will agree that legal mentions it, right? It mentions it. So that's the legal. There is no local that tells us how to do it. And so we go to administrative. And so when this law first passed, we went round and round and we talked to the board about it at the high school. How are we gonna accomplish this legal, right? How are we gonna comply with that? Are we just gonna tell the top 25? Are we just gonna say they're in the 25? Are we gonna give them the rank? We went all the way around the horn. And so ultimately, at that time, we can always change it because it's administrative in nature. We settled on giving everybody a rank because everybody was badgering us. I mean, it's like, we're like, well, if we just tell them what they're in, they're gonna badger us to what they are.
Right, I
And
understand.
then, so that's what we settled, but that's just kind of, that's the rationale on
And in
that.
practice, we
Yeah.
could consider.
But if I read
We can
the
certainly
administrative, that you gave us, it says, class rank will be based on the end of the 11th grade.
Yeah.
Not the end of the freshman
Yeah, so to clarify that regulation was written for how we do juniors. It's silent on how we do the top 25%.
Okay, so my big thing is that the one thing that I'm so against is ranking freshmen, and we don't have a policy that says we do that. It's silent. And so I don't know how we address anything when we're addressing a silent policy.
Well, let me reframe what you're saying. You're saying is, I'd love us to recommend making a policy about how we report sophomores.
I would recommend we just follow our policy.
Well,
And I would say we are.
yeah.
No.
Hold on, Clay. I'm saying we are. You can go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the policy is, and I believe that's what the administration is doing in practice. If you don't like the practice, we can discuss that.
Yeah.
But to say we're not following policy, I don't agree with that.
Right, but what I'm saying is the practice is not in my lane,
Exactly.
so I can't discuss that.
You can
I
discuss
can
it.
discuss the
You
policy.
can absolutely discuss it.
Right,
You can discuss it.
and the policy says that we're not gonna do what we do until their junior year.
It
That's
does
what
not
the-
say that.
It
I
says
don't-
we will
I
do
don't-
it after their junior year. I don't know, I didn't read the policy. I remember when this discussion came up and the decision was made to release them earlier, because I was very much on the fence about it. But there was a significant part of our community, and this goes back to whatever the slide was that said, think about our local community. There's a significant part of the community that wants the rankings released after freshman year on the argument or the belief that it gives you time to catch up or fix it. Now, I know that also creates pressure on the kid who, after 1 year of high school, is ranked very high, then their high school career perhaps becomes just trying to hold on,
So,
which that's not.
do we numerically rank, people past the 25%?
Currently.
So you're telling me, when we tell a sophomore that he is, or she, is 355,
Yep.
what is the mental makeup of that child going into their sophomore year?
I think it depends a lot on the child and the family and how you respond to it.
Right,
And
but I'm just
saying
trying
that-
to, I'm figuring out, all I know are the cons, I'm trying to figure out the pro.
Well, I think the pro of giving a number is if you know how much you have to make up. If your goal is to get in an automatic admission and you realize, okay, I'm ranked 50th.
But my question,
Well, hold on.
okay,
Then I know how far I have to go. I'm not saying that I necessarily embrace that, but that is a legitimate position and a concern.
so my thing is that
Okay.
going into their sophomore year, all right, if you say, like the law requires, you are in the top 25%, well then you're gonna feel, okay, well, I'm in the top 25%. And if you were told you're not in the top 25%, do you not already have the same effect?
But you don't know whether you are 26% or 75th%. So there is some people believe the more information gives you more power in making your choices and how you plan. But
So I think something to consider as you bring up this point is when, like Jimmy said, with Friendswood, if you were to consider top 10% ranking only and then publishing the cut score for what that is, that provides the same information without telling everyone in 26 through 100 percentile ranking what their number is. And so my point is, if we want to consider that, it would have an impact on that practice in our district.
it gives a target.
And the other thing, Claire, is we could certainly, as we engage the community, get feedback on how people think of our current practice. This feels a little adversarial, and it's not meant to be. It's like, we picked a way to do it way back then, we can certainly reconsider it, these are all great
Yeah.
ideas. But it's also important to see, well, what do other people think about it, like we're saying. There's different concerns in the general public about how we do
My
things.
phone has been blown up when
We
they
get,
saw this.
we can get feedback on it.
And something to think about, I mean, on getting the feedback, we have the opportunity, we haven't sent out our feedback February.
There's one question that's on the student one that says, have you, oh gosh, I'll have to look at, but it's something about,
Ever selected
have you ever
course
selected a course based on a multiplier?
And we might think about adding some more questions so that as we go through this process, we're gathering one more data point of information.
So, I'm gonna take us back here, I've heard us say, we definitely wanna get more information about, top 10% from the community, potential ripple effects, and, Lisa's asked about the inclusion part there. I did not hear any conversation about multiplier,
Yeah,
revisiting any of that.
I do.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna throw it out there just as an idea, it's just with the multiplier. So we currently give the same multiplier for anything that's advanced or AP. So what happens with that is you have kids that take, like, as a senior, they'll take Latin 1. With, the only reason they're taking it is because it has a, it's pre-AP. So it's advanced, it's advanced.
Yeah.
So, there's a little part of me that thinks maybe AP should have a little bit higher, at 1.15, because that truly is pushing you to take a more rigorous course versus taking a class just for the
So we'll
multiplier.
get,
That's just a thought.
I love it, so I'm wondering, Dana, if it would be possible, like, we've kind of got some directions. I know that there's some, we haven't gotten to the point of getting specific questions that you want us to go out and seek answers for. Can they email those to you? Like, do you wanna sit
And we
there
can
now?
do this presentation
Yeah.
To come up with
so
this.
that you
Yeah.
can look at, can you go back to the next slide? Yeah. I feel like we've got 3 areas of focus that we need to gather some information, come back to you, make a presentation again, about the top 10% inclusion and the multiplier. That's what I've heard at this point.
Well, yeah, and so administratively, I think it's safe to add how we do the 45% notification.
Yeah.
I know it's administrative, but we might as well
Yeah.
start
I
chomping
wrote
at
that
that.
down as well.
Can I ask a generic question? I mean, this is so new to me on so many different levels. What will benefit all kids the most? Like,
That's a great question.
I mean, okay, I don't have a top 10% kid, but my first child, that would just, and so, no, and my whole thing is I want you to be happy and whatever. So, but I'm not talking about my child, I'm talking about all these children, like, okay, what will give number 355
Yeah.
an option to go to the school that you know, she or he wants to go and
So
pursue?
here's the complexity in that,
That's
is
hard
that there
for
are
me to
different
comprehend.
parents and different families are gonna define success
I
a
know.
different way.
I
We can
know.
define success a different way by saying the number of kids who are admitted to some of those other colleges that they would not have had a look, like Corey's bringing up, you know. But then there's other members of our community that define success as
You got
high
it.
academic
I
rigor,
get it.
where everybody has a number in our system.
I
And so
get it,
we've got
yeah.
a wide variety of definitions of success. And so
Right.
that's gonna be important for you all to articulate. What is our definition of success? If we're holding up the profile learner, what do we want that would be best for all of our children, not Dana Bashira's children, not
Yeah.
Harry Hildren's
I
children.
know,
You know, and
yeah.
so that's our charge.
But what, so but what does that look like for all kids? Like, is there something that's gonna help the top 10% that's also gonna help the bottom 10%? And is that even possible? I don't know, cause I'm so new to it.
So we've done some preliminary investigation into the Friendswood model that really does show kind of acceptance rates
Okay.
being increased because of the elimination. So we'd like the opportunity to bring that
Okay,
information.
that's interesting.
And I'd like to broaden that to not just look at the ripple effects of the Friendswood, but let's look at the other 2 models. And if there are other models, cause I agree with you. I think ultimately we need to see what are the impacts, what are the ripple effects across the different groups of students that we have, so that we can come to something that does the best of balancing all those things.
It's just
But
hard.
I
It's
also
very
think
hard.
that, so, I got an email, and I'll share it with y'all, an email from the old superintendent at Highland Park. And the reason they got rid of the rank was because of what you were saying, is that, you know, we were almost doing the homework for them. Like the admission offices, and they spent a lot of time going to admission offices all over the country, especially in Texas. Then once they get if they get a Alamo Heights graduate, and we say they're 250, well, they're like, oh, you know, okay. But if the application just says they're not in the top 10%, well, then they actually have to read it,
Yeah,
okay?
I agree with, I'm all
So,
for it,
so
yeah.
that's why they got rid of it. That's why Westlake got rid of it. That's why, you know, a lot of these places don't do it.
Right.
There's not one private school in the state of Texas that ranks, that I know. Okay, so they're obviously getting into colleges. So I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons. If a pro is, so people can know where they stand, okay, fine. Tell them they're in the second quarter, tell them they're in the third quarter, tell them they're in the fourth quarter.
And it may be
You know,
that kind of.
But don't individualize it, okay? Do not say your kid's number 7 and your kid's number 89.
But if my kid wants to know that he or she is number 7,
I have no problem going to the counselor's office with you or them and say, okay, where am I really? Why can't they do that? You know, why?
So that creates a.
So we've got some directions for things, and as specific questions come up, you're gonna email them to Dana, and then Frank, Corey, and I will work our way through them. So I think that's where you guys, this isn't something we're gonna decide.
No, I
in one
understand.
meeting, but I think it's been a good this and just kind of get a temperature check. So I'm gonna take us here. This is the final thing. I'm gonna go back to where we started about mission, but I'm all gonna center on this word about excellence. Because as we do this, I live life in hope and optimism, and I do have hope and optimism that we can change the policy, and it will help us provide more opportunities for kids. I firmly believe that. My concern I have is just the narrative in our community that academic standards are declining. And as chief academic officer, like, I'm worried about, now we're talking about class rank, how that might feed into that. So I want us to think deeply, and I want you as ambassadors to our community thinking about how do we have this class rank conversation in a way that supports the idea that we are about high standards for all and increasing opportunities for all.
And can I follow up with one last thing? And that is actually even a numeric rank, I am not that against it. Every parent I talk to is not that against a numeric rank. But what I am very foundationally against is doing it to sophomores. Okay?
I get that.
There is nothing that is gained by doing it to sophomores. It's not in our policy. Okay? And furthermore, if we just say, you know what, you're in the top quarter, you're in the second quarter, you're in the third quarter, fine. That's fine. Okay, at least they'll know kind of where they are. But I just feel like they're 1 month into their second year of high school, and we individualize them at that point. If we do it the junior year, like we do it now, I really don't have a problem with that, because they're already starting to think about college. But in their sophomore year, they're just thinking about what just happened. They've been there 2 semesters.
So if you could look at the timing, because I think I have a different perspective. The timing we give them right now gives them 5 semesters, if I do the math right. No, it gives them 5 semesters before graduation to pick their classes, is what I'm saying. If we continue to give them their ranking in October of their sophomore year, they then have their spring, sophomore, and then the 4 that comes as junior and senior 5. I'd love to know, like, how is that perceived from a college standpoint? Because if we push that back a year, that then leaves them 3 semesters, right, of course selections, to then have the ability to make changes and pivot if they don't like their ranking. So I understand the point, but I'd love to see.
I think that's where it came from. I believe that's where giving them is that people wanted to know
earlier to have more time.
And you have to weigh. They still want to know what you're taking your senior year.
Your 6 being your freshman, sophomore, junior. Okay.
Yeah.
So in reality.
But so that's the thing, is really by doing it sophomore year, you're giving them, they really only have 3 semesters after that to bring them to GPA.
And if you bump it up, then they
So
only
if you
have.
don't give it to them to junior year.
They have 1 semester of cooking courses.
Right.
Since we need to wrap it up, and this is gonna be an ongoing conversation, can we, you said that you'd begun to do some work at looking at the other districts' housing. When can we anticipate coming back together to discuss this next?
So we've got, items that you all have placed on the agenda for the next Wednesday, February meeting, so. And so something would have to bump from that, and if you tell me that this is a priority over conversations about, block schedule over conversations about our hiring process. There's a third, item. I'm gonna need you to help
All right,
me understand how to prioritize, but
I'll
we can
talk.
come back and just keep chipping away at this.
I just wanna make sure you have.
Like Mark, if you want, like, it just takes a little bit of time to go out and talk to folks here, talk to folks there, read stuff in addition to all the other things that are on the
Right,
plate.
you've got a lot of.
So,
In the
March?
interest of being thorough, I would rather it be later than
Yeah.
trying to rush and get, and
Yeah.
kind of.
Next
I'm
time.
fine, getting the data, okay? But I have one follow-up question, and I don't know if you can answer, but how do you feel about
That's what I wanted to know
Hey,
too.
Corey Smith.
That's exactly what I wanted to know.
it? Y'all are the educators,
Yes, that's
understand?
exactly what I wanted to know.
Okay,
I was gonna reach out to
I'm
other
more
people.
interested in how you truly feel, because A, you're doing it every day, not me, I'm building buildings. And same with you,
Right.
you know?
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna put it on, I don't mean to put around it, but I'm also gonna say, like, I would think all of us around the table, we may have an opinion that we hold today, or what's today, February, whatever.
Nine.
But as we learn more, like, I'm also, like, hearing this conversation about the time to choose classes, like, I need time to really think that through before I said, this is, what I think, but Corey, you're so close to it. Like, do you have any key thoughts? We're gonna give you the last word.
My key thoughts are, I want the system that works best for all of our kids.
Yeah.
And so whatever we discover and whatever we find out that's gonna benefit all of our kids, whether that means we're, looking at ranking top 10% for automatic admissions and then everyone else gets looked at as an individual. But I think we still are in that research and discovery phase. I've seen it done a lot of different ways, and so my goal is to just make sure that all of our kids have the best possible opportunities.
And I'm gonna answer this, Clay, even though you didn't ask me to, but 26 years in this district has pointed me to the trust in the process around this. And this is, anytime we've walked through big decisions that impact every single one of the students in this district, we've trusted the process. We've trusted our engagement with the community, getting feedback along the way. We've trusted the going slow to make it better. We need to be disciplined in what we've done year after year in big decisions like this. No one's gonna we're not gonna slow this down. Again, this is something that was on the radar. It's something that was part of the conversation that we're having about the exclusions already. But to me, I just feel adamantly strong that we've worked the process as we've done in the past, so.
Hey, I've got a one data point that I think would be interesting, is what's the average, ACT and SAT of our second quartile students?
So it would be helpful, if we've got that down. Your
Does that make sense?
After
Yeah,
you leave
let's
here,
send emails.
send them straight to me.
Okay.
Any questions, follow-up questions that you
Yeah.
have.
Because I think that, I think that that's an interesting data point.
Well, okay, and if we're gonna ask that question, what is the
Well, we're about
SAT
to
ACT
adjourn.
score of the top quarter? Because you would be shocked, but the SAT ACT score is the top 10 kids in the
Well,
class.
yeah,
So it's
why I'm asking that, okay, yes,
It's true.
true statement, but what I'm saying is, our first quartile students. And therein lies the whole ranking problem.
That's part of the consideration,
Also,
I
I mean,
agree.
like, my son's 96.4 GPA, when he got his class rank, he was like, well, I guess I'm not, that smart. And, I'm like, all I care about is you being happy and you doing your best. So
Yeah.
it's a mental thing for some kids.
No, I know that.
Well, I know you know that. The 96.4 is a really good GPA.
All right, we are adjourned.
Good
You don't have anything to
conversation.
worry about.